Toran is a refugee from Maiwand in Kandahar. He was interviewed in front of his makeshift tent. Listen to what he said. Now I have reached here where I have nothing. Here there is no fighting, no war, but right now there is an intense war in my hometown. I was working on my land. I was cultivating wheat. I came to this desert, but we can stay and live on these sands. On this camp floor we are sitting now, people are dying from hunger. And another Afghan voice speaks up. The drought has destroyed my land. It has drained the water. We can't get enough water to drink or to clean ourselves. We fled our homes because there was no water. I won't remember a season as terrible as this. Farming is my only income, and I have 10 children. My friends, distinguished guests, are there words that can convey the tragedy of this today? Ordinary Afghans, hardworking people, people who want to tend to their land and raise their children, face a drought that strips them from their homes and steals their food. It steals their future. When I first saw these numbers of how many people this drought would affect, I could not believe my eyes. 12 million people, 1/3 of our country, 3 times the entire population of Kabul city. 12 million ruined farmers, 12 million families whose children will not have enough to eat. 12 million people whose lives now depend on kindness of strangers. I am the Minister of Finance, but this appeal is not from my ministry. It's not even from the government. It's from all of Afghanistan. It's an appeal to humanity to show that by working together, we can save 12 million fellow human beings from hunger and destitution. We have a very small window of opportunity to cushion the worst effects of this drought, but only if we act now. We can feed people who have no food. We can keep their children in school. We can help prevent women and girls from being trafficked by desperate families. This can be done. Today, we launch an appeal to prevent a tragedy. It's a tragedy made in part by weather, but in large measure, it is also a tragedy made by man. The drought is real and it is severe. But as terrible as the drought would be, the Taliban's offensive is making its effects infinitely worse. Farms are being abandoned. People who could be harvesting crops to tide themselves over cannot even visit their fields or repair their canals. I don't want to dwell on casting blame, but there is no ceasefire, no reduction in the violence. There is only the drought. For the past several months, our teams from ministries have worked closely with the humanitarian community to assess the drought and build a strategy for averting a disaster. Collaboration has been close and constructive. We have been as conservative and pragmatic as possible in our estimates, not just for needs, but also for the ability to deliver. The humanitarian appeal being launched today has the government's full support and endorsement. However, we, both the UN and our government, recognize that if we only provide humanitarian relief, we can only quickly set in play a long cycle of displacement and dependency. Afghanistan today is still dotted with IDPs and IDP camps where people displaced 2 decades ago are locked in limbo, still unable to return to their home to restart ruined farms. Fed and sheltered by the world's generous donations, They survive in settlements that are neither here nor there. An entire generation lost to the country. Unless something is done, this cycle will repeat. The number of internally displaced people, the IDPs, has already started to rise. To limit displacement and find enduring solutions to the effects of the drought, the UN and government plan abolishes the boundary between humanitarian relief and development-driven recovery. A core principle of the appeal is to keep people in their communities, to provide immediate short-term jobs, rehabilitate critical infrastructure so communities can better cope with the impacts of climate crisis, and strengthen the provision of frontline health care, especially for mothers and children. Where people are not already displaced by the conflict, this is a feasible objective. To achieve this goal, the government and the UN have developed a strategy that plays to each partner's comparative advantage. The government will fully participate in the humanitarian response through our first Vice President's leadership and direct engagement with the humanitarian cluster through the Afghanistan National Disaster Management Authority, the Ministry of Agriculture, Irrigation and Livestock, the Ministry of Rural Rehabilitation and Development, and the Ministry of Health. On the ground, much of this work will be led by our humanitarian partners, but to complement the humanitarian efforts, the Afghan government will mobilize and fund 4 of its largest, most successful national priority programs. Our programs for health, for community development, for education, and water. Each of these programs has broad coverage in drought-affected provinces, and we will be scaling those up, including further work on seed and livestock distribution so that farmers can quickly get back to farming. The needs assessment is still underway. The current budget estimate for the government support for these programs that will be critical to complement humanitarian work will total $150 to $200 million. As many of you know, each of the national priority program has a long history of successful implementation in Afghanistan, including special measures to ensure the participation of women and girls. We welcome your review and support. This is quite literally no other way to get these services to such a large number of affected communities. We will also look to our ARTF partners to help us offset some of these costs, some by savings and relocations, but some by encouraging new contributions to the ARTF in recognition of its role in paving the way for Afghan's recovery from the drought. As the Minister of Finance, it is my duty to talk about money. We don't have enough. The humanitarian appeal is not even 50% funded. As we all know, that the global COVID pandemic has made international assistance and humanitarian support even more scarce. From our side, we're trying our best to raise funds. I will be making a special appeal to the wealthy Afghan and diaspora communities to help their countrymen. And we have already started a dialogue with our development partners to help fund those 4 national priority programs. Even as we speak, my team and the President are going through the budget to make sure that all non-security spending is directed towards the people, including support for the drought. But this will still not be enough. In a context where, as you all know, our budget is almost entirely strained by the war, we need to act urgently and effectively. We must combine the strengths of our government systems and the strengths of our humanitarian partners. Together, we can help protect lives of 12 million people who are at the risk of starvation today. But it is also not just about those lives. It's the impact of the drought of this scale is intergenerational. Its aftershocks will be felt not just in Afghanistan, but globally. Even every toddler that becomes stunted, every mother that dies from hunger, every family that is forced to flee their home, every child forced to miss school, these are all families whose futures hang in peril for generations to come. Compounded with the challenge of conflict and insecurity, inaction against this drought will not only devastate Afghanistan's future, but its long-term impact will reverberate regionally and even globally. We thank you for your attention and support.